Welcome to Hey Sis, a digital show powered by Urban One, focused on health, wellness, and living your best life. I'm your host today, Jazzy, and ladies, it's time for us to have a conversation about our health. Hey, welcome to Hey Sis, a digital show powered by Urban One that focuses on health, wellness, and living your best life. I'm your host today, Jazzy, and before we get started, we're gonna have a little fun and do a trivia question. What is the strangest thing that can happen to the uterus? And my guest today, of course, is going to answer that a little bit later on today. Our main focus is to talk about fibroids. Welcome to the show, Dr. Suzanne Slonim.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yes, so tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I'm a doctor. I'm an interventional radiologist, and that means I do minimally invasive image-guided surgeries. Kind of what like cardiologists do in the heart, I do that in all the other organs, and I use those same catheter-based techniques in all the other parts of the body. And so a few years ago, about 5 years ago, I decided that I was going to follow my heart and focus on what I want to treat. And so for about the past 5 years, I have treated exclusively uterine fibroids without surgery. And so my practice is all about treating fibroids.
I see. So we're going to do a hot topic before we really get into the nitty gritty of the fibroids. And I want everyone to know, yes, I took a coronavirus test, and so did the doctor. We are both negative, and I actually have antibodies. So I plan on donating some blood soon. All right, so the hot topic I want to talk about today is why are so many African American women young dying during childbirth? Recently, there was a YouTube star. She was 24 years old, and she passed away at 8 months. Her and her baby didn't make it. And then there was another young lady. She was 26, and she had an emergency C-section, and she also passed away. Why is that happening in our communities?
You know, it's really a public health crisis, and it's been a long-term problem. It's multifactorial, but I'll tell you, in the United States, about 700 women per year have a pregnancy-related death, and that counts anytime during pregnancy or up to a year after pregnancy, if it's related to the pregnancy or it was a condition that was exacerbated by the pregnancy. And so that's across the United States, all women. It comes out to about 16 women die per 100,000.
Wow.
But that is 12 white women and 40 black women.
Oh my goodness.
There's a huge disparity. Black women are 2 to 3 times more likely to die. And when you take into account all the factors like socioeconomic status and education and several factors that have been studied across the board, and it gets worse. College educated women are 5 times more likely to die related to pregnancy if they're black than if they're white. There's a lot of things feeding into that.
Yes, I did have a statistic here from the CDC which you kind of just named, that 2 to 3 times more likely to pass, even if you are a college-educated black woman or not. And it's just really hard to believe that so many women are passing away. And so some of the doctors say it has something to do with implicit bias. Can you elaborate on that?
There's a lot of factors involved. Implicit bias is definitely one of them, and that sort of points to the systemic racism that permeates all of our society, medicine included. You know, it's interesting, when you survey doctors, 85% of them say that racism has an effect on healthcare delivery, but only 25% of them say that they have anything to do with it. So it's something that's invisible to us on the inside. But there's factors like the facilities that black women usually go to usually have a lower standard of care. They're not up to date on the most recent procedures, the most recent tests. But also, black women are under socioeconomic and cultural stress from a much earlier age, and it's a long-term problem, so that by the time they get to childbearing age, they already have a poorer health condition coming into pregnancy. And it's something that involves women from before conception to way postpartum.
That is just really sad. And you know, I've done a lot of work in the community, and I've even noticed, and just people that I know, a lot of African American women don't go to the doctor like they should. And get the checkups like they should. So sometimes they don't even know the things that are going on with their bodies.
Right.
And that's why it's really good for us to have this conversation about the fibroids that we're going to get into in just a moment. But before we do, I've been dying to know the answer to that trivia question.
Really?
So what is the strangest thing that can happen to the uterus? And my guess is it can twist. I don't know.
Twisting's not a bad idea. Some women would say that it can drop. That's kind of strange.
Okay.
But really the strangest thing is it can turn inside out.
What?
Yep, like a sock turning inside out.
Really?
It can. It's not good when it happens.
I had no idea.
It's not good.
I don't want to be one of the women with mine turned inside out. I'll tell you that.
That's right. Yes.
Oh, that's great. All right, so let's go ahead and start talking about the fibroids.
Okay.
And I consider myself a young woman. I'm in my 30s, and I just had my daughter, I want to say about 3 years ago. And I go to the doctor, maybe not as regularly as I should, but when I went, I found out I had a fibroid. And fortunately, it didn't hurt me in regards to my childbearing. I was able to have my child without any issues, but I found it really interesting that I didn't know I had a fibroid, but I knew I had horrible cramps and different things like that. So how are fibroids different in African American women?
First of all, they're much more common in Black women. About 80% of Black women will have fibroids. It's about 50% for white women. Hispanics are in between there. But 80% of Black women have fibroids. And I see women and I say, you probably have fibroids, and they say, no, I don't. And I think to myself, you probably do and you just don't know it. But if they're not bothering you, you don't have to do anything about it. Black women fibroids are a different problem than white women fibroids.
Really?
They start earlier. They grow faster. They're more likely to be numerous. They grow larger. They're more likely to cause symptoms. They cause symptoms earlier, and that means they require treatment or intervention or surgery earlier. Okay. Not only that, feeding into the overall disparities in healthcare, when a Black woman has surgery for fibroids, if she has a hysterectomy or myomectomy, she's much more likely, I think she's about 3 times more likely to need a blood transfusion, and she's more likely to die during surgery than a white woman would.
Wow, I had no idea
Absolutely.
about that. And I have a girlfriend who, like I said, she recently had a child, and she found out she had a fibroid on her uterus, and she was luckily able to continue to have her baby without taking the fibroid out, but hers does bother her to where she would like to take it out, now that she's had the child. But she's also a young woman, and now that I think about it, my mother had a fibroid, so this is something that is happening a lot with young African American women, and we just don't go to the doctor to know that this is what it is. We have heavy periods, we're cramping, and maybe some of these are some of the symptoms and signs. Could you give us some of the symptoms to look out for?
I'd be happy to. It's incredible what women put up with. I mean, absolutely unbelievable.
I see it all the time.
Heavy bleeding, cramping pelvic pain, bleeding between periods, urinary frequency, constipation, pain during sex, all kinds of things, and just the bulk of having an enlarged uterus. It is the average size uterus that I see in women who come to see me is about 5 months pregnant. That's the average of what I see. I see women whose uterus is up to their sternum, and they just live with it. Men would never put up with that. Never.
So what are the treatment options for women that would like to get their fibroid removed?
That's exactly what I deal with. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go from the least invasive to the most invasive. Okay, the least invasive is birth control pills, or pills that can regulate your period if your main problem is irregularity or spotting. Okay. Then there's hormones that sort of put you into a menopause state. Okay, when you go through menopause, your fibroids stop growing, they shrink. And so they can cause your symptoms to improve, but they put you in a menopause state. So a lot of women don't really like the way they feel when they're on them. It's not a good long-term solution. Then there's endometrial ablation. That's a great option for women whose main problem is heavy bleeding. The gynecologist puts a device inside the uterus through the cervix and destroys the inside lining, and when it heals, the scar tissue doesn't bleed nearly as much as normal, but you can't get pregnant after that. Then would be uterine fibroid embolization, which is what I do, uterine fibroid embolization. And in that procedure, I feed a tiny tube through the blood vessels. I go in at the wrist here, right to the blood supply to the fibroids. And when I get the tube in the right place, I inject tiny particles that will plug the blood flow, so the fibroids, it cuts off their blood supply, so they will die and shrink. 90% of the time, it takes care of all the symptoms. And you have a little dot on your wrist, and that's it.
That's it.
Next would be myomectomy. That's surgery to remove the fibroids and leave the uterus in place. It's a surgery, but it takes out the fibroids, leaves the uterus so you could still get pregnant. It's the procedure of choice for women who have fibroids that need to be treated, but who want to get pregnant in the future.
I see.
And then the most invasive would be hysterectomy.
And I've heard quite a few times some women that when they go to the doctor, they tell them to go for the hysterectomy.
Yeah,
and they're like, no, I'm still young. I don't have any kids. I'm not going to do the hysterectomy. I'm just going to live with the fibroids.
Right.
So how would you know what's the best option for you to take?
You really have to talk about it with your doctor. So many doctors, their first response is to hysterectomy. And that's because we're taught that in medical school.
Okay.
But you have to say, I don't want a hysterectomy, what are my other options? Now, if you have a doctor who won't talk to you about that, who says, no, you just have to have a hysterectomy, find another doctor. If you talk to your doctor, when I started my practice, there was one doctor who was sending me patients. All these other patients would come to me behind the back of their gynecologist, and I'd send the gynecologist a letter with the patient's permission and say, hey, she came to talk to me about this, we're going to do this procedure. Now there's over 150 doctors who are sending patients to me because they know their patients want it.
Yes.
And so if they don't give a woman an alternative,
Yes.
she's going to go somewhere else.
Right.
You're in charge of your health care.
That's, you know what, and you're in charge of your life.
Exactly.
And sometimes you have to fight for your life, and you have to fight for what you think is best for yourself.
Exactly.
And I think speaking up will also help the disparities of African American women just by saying, no, I need a second opinion. I'm not going to let you just tell me this is what I need.
Or even not just no, explain to me why I can't do something else, or what are my other options, or the doctors need to involve the women in the decisions that they're making and explain the options and help a patient reason out what's the best answer, what's the best solution.
Yeah, this has been very informative. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to share this information with all my friends and family, especially women that I know who are personally affected by this and who want to go on to have children later on in life. This is the best option for them, in my opinion. So if someone wanted to reach out to you and just get more information, how can you be contacted?
Easiest way is on our website. It's fibroidfree.com. And you can call our office, of course. The number's on the website, fibroidfree.com, 214-838-6440.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today with Hey Sis, an Urban One digital platform. Thank you.